Now, let's have a look. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, yes. When I was growing up, I dreamed of travel and adventure.
Hi, thank you.
Then one day, that dream came true.
This is it. I'm standing on the top of the world.
For 3 decades, I've been lucky enough to travel the world, making documentaries and sharing my adventures with millions of viewers.
Michael Palin set the tone for all travel TV today.
It's like a very friendly steamroller.
He came at the right time. He had the right daring qualities.
He has huge warmth, and it's a warmth that spreads across all kinds of people.
Bye-bye, Suleiman too. Bye-bye, Joseph. Bye, Mohammed.
It expanded my little horizons to the rest of the planet.
All through my travels, I kept a diary.
I always felt when I've travelled, it's really, really important to keep a record. I mean, every day is precious. You're seeing things you'll probably never, ever see again in your life.
Now, for the first time, I'm looking back, revisiting my most memorable journeys and opening my diaries to find forgotten moments from my travels.
My way of looking at each journey is something different, new, special, exciting, dramatic and challenging. It's not really knowing exactly how it was going to turn out. I was very, very excited about travelling. It was an adventure and it was seeing the world, all these things I just loved since I was very young growing up in Sheffield.
But before I was a traveller, I was a python, shaking up comedy, offending people and being very silly. But like all good things, it came to an end and it was time to decide what next.
And then out of the blue comes this suggestion from the BBC.
Hello. Yeah. BBC, yes, I know. Do you want me to what? Want me to go around the world? Yeah. But, I mean, yes, I don't see why. I mean, you go around the world in 36 hours. Ah, 80. 80 days, yes.
One of the things that we felt we should do at the beginning was talk to an experienced traveller. And I emphasised that I was the novice, I was a learner, so people wouldn't expect too much from me. So who better to go and see than Alan Wicker?
Alan Wicker did these big travel programmes called Wicker's World, which were very much about him and his journey, quite formal, quite reportery.
They seem an absolutely cracking people to me. Are they what they appear to be?
Yes, they are.
All the time?
They're like that all the time. They're the kindest, most happy people I've ever lived with. They're just fantastic.
How do you cope when things sort of fall apart or something completely unusual happens?
I become tremendously British, you must always speak English. You mustn't try and speak the local language, because when the Tonton Macoute are sticking guns into your ribs, you mustn't try and say, please don't, to them. You must say in English, do you mind standing aside? Excuse me, a BBC television. Do you mind? Just back a bit. That's right, you know. And that's exactly what we did. And they were absolutely staggered, and it worked like a dream.
That's the way he travelled. In a suit and tie, always the rather detached Englishman. And I realised I couldn't travel like that. I hadn't got a tie. Well, I did have a tie, I had one tie.
Right, where are the quarters? The 40 bearers who are going with us on this trip. At the very last moment, I remembered to bring the tie. You never know, it might come in useful for strangling muggers or whatever.
When I was growing up, I mean, 1950s, no one travelled very far, you know, Nottingham maybe, or Leeds, but that was about it. So suddenly to find myself being out there doing things that, you know, would be unbelievable when I was growing up. It was so exciting, and it was so liberating.
The idea was beautifully simple. It was a race against the clock. I would trace the journey of Phileas Fogg, the hero of Jules Verne's classic 19th century novel, across land and sea with no planes allowed. Could I make it round the world in 80 days?
I saw it as something almost theatrical, you know. It was all there in my mind already, the longest journey of my life. I don't think anyone had ever, the BBC ever said, well, we're going to go with one traveller and we're going to spend 80 days with him and he's going to be watched by the camera every single moment. You know, there's hardly a moment of privacy. That hadn't been done before. We were sort of toying with a completely new way of doing documentaries.
This is on the Espresso Egitto, which was the ship from which we went from Venice to Alexandria. You know, exotic part of the journey, but I was clearly at the beginning of the journey and I was very unsure of myself. This is what I wrote. Occasionally, the realization that this whole project is supported on my shoulders demands not just my survival, but my wit, energy, exuberance, and enthusiasm quite terrifies me. It's going to be a supreme test. But I'm determined to pull this off. Failure is unthinkable. That used to keep me awake at night. Failure is unthinkable. The enormity of the task itself had me worried. And it was tied in with how I was going to present myself. Could I be funny for 80 more days? Could I be funny for one more day? And because everyone agreed that, well, it's got to be Palin being spontaneous, no one was going to really step in and say, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. That was against the spirit of it. But at the same time, it fed on a sort of insecurity in my mind. This was arriving in Alexandria. And it was quite a moment for me because it was the first real sort of moment of foreignness. Up to that point, I was within a European perspective. Suddenly, I'm in an African perspective.
It was a world you didn't know at all. Suddenly being somewhere foreign, strange, really different. Everything felt different. The heat, the smells, the sounds. You can't relate to it in an English way, particularly. You certainly can't be all colonial about it and saying, come on, excuse me. You've just got to go with it. And I realised I was quite excited by that. That was where the fun began, I thought.
As well as keeping a diary, I also carried a tape recorder. And although I kept the tapes, I've hardly ever listened to them. Until now.
Now proceeding at a manic gallop on the old horse-drawn carriage. It is just extraordinary. Lots of little individual enterprises. The untidiness, really. But I suppose if I were on my own, I'd be pretty scared.
Says it all, really. It's sort of just spills all around you, all these different sensations, and the fact that everyone seems to be mad. Mad but happy, I would have to say.
I finally reached the handsome station, resolved to shed some English inhibitions and become a part of Africa.
My first experience of fending for myself in a very difficult environment, which I knew very little about. There was no sort of English lettering, English signs, or anything like that. Just go in there, Michael, ask for a train ticket to Cairo. And honestly, at this point, I just didn't quite know what I was supposed to do.
Cairo? Cairo? Okay, here we go.
Palin, look at you. You look like a child. Look at your boyish looks. That's what they always say about Palin, his boyish good looks.
One. Yes, one way to Cairo.
It's real life. It's happening. It's not scripted. They're not all extras. It's reality. And we're seeing a little moment of it. We're seeing a little fragment of existence in that train station at that time. I love it.
Cairo? Yes. Yes. I've just come from there. I shall walk to Cairo at this rate.
This is even cleverer than I thought. That it was actually unrehearsed. I mean, he turns up at a ticket booth and says, I want to go to somewhere or other, and it's a real exchange. And if there's a confusion about understanding one another, there's confusion about understanding it, which is how it is.
I personally think that one of the reasons viewers like telly travel programmes is that they are quite hard to script and overproduce. You know, the very nature of going on a journey where serious travel is involved means stuff is going to go wrong, people are going to appear who you weren't expecting, and there's going to be spontaneity. And I think people enjoy that. They like the sense that this isn't running on rails and somebody's feeding lines through an earpiece. And certainly watching around the world, you had that sense that perhaps this entire team don't entirely know what they're doing, but focusing on Michael in front of the camera, clearly the bloke hasn't got a clue. And that's great. That's fun for us. And you can see he's open to the experiences he's having as well.
The Englishman trying to make sense of it all, hanging on to his Englishness, but surely they shouldn't have done that. People shouldn't shout on stations, they shouldn't argue in public and all that sort of thing. But that's what they do. It happens all the time.
I saw you before, you're troubled.
After buying the ticket, I just thought, this is hopeless. I'm going to look completely incompetent. In the end, it was this sort of incompetence which people quite enjoyed. They sort of felt comfortable with that. Like, you know, well, we'd have been in the same situation if we'd had to buy a ticket at Alexandria and we didn't know any Arabic.
The thing about when you have had a career and you're moving into something new is you're almost like a baby, because everything is fresh and new again. And you could see that. The thing that makes it special is when you have hardened travellers, that kind of newness, that sense of excitement is gone. Yeah, but it was there with Michael, and people connect to that.
Back across the Nile to the city centre to search out a room for the night. Eschewing the Hiltons and the Intercontinentals, I plump for the classy ring of something older and more dignified.
When Michael surfed into the travel shows, we knew it was going to be different. We knew it would be quite what we call in the business roughy-tufty, not all smart hotels and lovely clothes. It would be a real traveller's piece of work.
There is no hot water. There is no stopper on the bath, even if there were hot water. And the fact that so many fittings don't work add to the sort of magical anarchy of Cairo. I know that's something of a romantic notion, but it is just how you have to approach the place.
It's good to hear that, actually. Magical anarchy and things like that I've said are probably exactly what I felt, and I feel a slight regret that I've never felt quite like that again, because the next time you go somewhere, it just is less of a surprise, and this was just bomb, a real assault on the senses. Unfortunately, we were going rather slowly. We got rather late, and things really began to fall apart.
First, we missed the ship that was meant to take us on towards Muscat. Then, forced to travel overland, we hit a snag in Saudi Arabia.
The situation is this. It's going to put us at least 4 days late. If I get your boat round to Dubai, that's the quickest we can do it. However, I thought we were scuppered, but at 3:30 a.m. this morning, the Saudi Ministry of Information came up with this letter, which gives me permission to travel right across Saudi Arabia as far as Dubai overland. However, it only extends to me. It doesn't include you lads as well. Sorry about that, but this is the way it goes, and at least it gets me as far as Dubai, then maybe we'll catch up some time on the Dow. So, this is it, lads. See you in Dubai in 2 days. Sorry about that. You'll get a lift, pretty boys like you. Drive carefully, Michael. Yeah. Fine. Good luck. Bye, good luck.
Pretty boys like us.
I did feel on this journey that anything could happen and you had to be able to deal with it. At the same time, there was a part of me that really wanted to get this done in less than 80 days. From Saudi Arabia onwards, began to lose days, 4 days behind. So it was a combination of frustration because I wanted to get the thing done properly, but exhilaration that we're having, you know, these weird and wonderful things were happening.
There are times when everything seems to go wrong when you're travelling and you just think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And there's this intense frustration. What was lovely about that moment was that he showed that frustration. He was like, ah! But you find a way around, and he did. He found a new way, a new route, and that was just brilliant and just lovely. He just kept on going.
Today, Dubai resembles a space-age city of the future. When I got there, it was still a working port on the Persian Gulf, and I needed a lift. That I'd arrived in Dubai at all was a small triumph, and I'm even more cheered when I look out next morning onto a most promising waterfront. And at last, my first sight of a dhow. Preceded by the provisions, I board our dhow, Al-Shama, which means candlelight in Arabic.
No one really spoke English, but the captain spoke a few words of English. The other 17 members of the crew and our own crew had to sleep there on that deck, on those sacks and all that. There was no cabins or anything.
It's all very strange. We're setting off for 6 days on the high seas, out of radio contact, on a boat with not a lifebelt in sight. We're heading out into the Persian Gulf, where 9 years of war are just coming to an end.
Nothing like this had been done before, which made the whole thing quite sort of alarming, but also exciting at the same time. You were sort of making up the rules as you went along.
This is a totally beautiful piece of television. There's nothing rigged or contrived or organised about this. They are just out in the middle of the ocean for days with people who have done this journey just like this every day for centuries, for generations. And so we're getting an insight into the reality of how these guys live in a way that television would have found so hard to show until Michael Palin and these guys decided to do 6 days in a dhow.
The plumbing is basic. They favour the hole-in-the-barrel system. But using it is nowhere near as alarming as getting to it. The approach is scorchingly hot by day and suicidal at night. But once installed, one enjoys direct contact with nature. This is rather a shock and causes my bowels to lock solid for 3 days.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah, I think it's kind of a reoccurring theme with Michael when he goes on boats. He talks about his bowels and how they get locked solid.
That's another thing you never talk about. But travellers only talk about your bowels. What's the water like? You know, oh, I had the runs, I was constipated, I had this, that. It becomes something that you don't get shy about. It's terribly important.
I think the British public know more about Michael's bowels than his GP or his doctors. I'm telling you, we all know that his bowels are probably a national treasure.
I've been on squatters, my God, hanging out over precipices. You've got to face up to grimmish things. You've got to know that maybe you won't be able to shave. You've got to know that sometimes you're not seen in your best light, as it were. And you always want to, even if you're a clown, which he is, an entertainer and not a vain man, which he's not remotely, you kind of want to look good on screen, and sometimes you can't.
Oh, this is not for primetime television. This is for indigestion, I hope he knows. A short walk on the Englishman. Being ill. Suddenly, old Kasim comes and walks all over me.
This was a time before technology took over our lives. The dhow had no sat-nav, no Wi-Fi, no phone, and the crew navigated by sextant.
I felt a great curiosity about the people I was with. I wanted to get things on a personal level, and that's where the dhow really worked. It had to be personal because there was no way of us getting away from anybody else.
There was one moment in particular that really stuck with me at the time, where he sat on this old dhow with an older bloke, and Michael was listening to this old Walkman, which, for anyone who's significantly younger than me, was our early MP3 player type. It played something called a tape, and you had to press a button, and you had these headphones that went over your head.
Now you put them on like that. Okay. How's that, Kasim? In? All right? Now, prepare yourself for a bit of Bruce Springsteen. This may have very serious effect, but tell me to stop if you don't like it. All right? You like it? Good beat? This must be one of the oddest audiences for The Wild, the Innocent and the E Street Shuffle ever recorded. It's good, isn't it?
It was just brilliant and beautiful, and honestly, it was a bit of a revelation. It was like, oh my goodness, they're just like us, these strange foreign people. And that was a big difference on telly to what had gone before.
It was supposed to be a 5-10 minute sequence at most, and it was the editor who looked at all this and said, I think it worked better at 55 minutes. And so the dhow became a complete episode.
The grey mist is lifting and revealing the gateway of India. So the time comes to say goodbye to the people in whose hands we've entrusted our lives for the last week.
Bye-bye, Salman. Bye-bye, Salman too. Bye-bye, Joseph. Bye, Mohammed. Bye. Bye-bye, Arun. Bye-bye, Yaku. Bye-bye, Kashmir. Oh, look at that. Oh, thanks very much. You're very nice people, very good crew. I always sail with you. Thank you. Oh, here we go.
It's about these people he meets and those little moments, those little sparks of interaction that are the purest joy of travel. And he shows us that, and he relates it to us, and we have it, we keep it ourselves a little bit. We benefit from his little encounters.
In India, there's so much going on and so much to sort of take in. This busy, seething city in the middle of this busy, seething country. There was an awful lot happening on the street, and we had to make sense of it and make our way through it. We were then going to be staying at the Taj Hotel. So I went from 7 days on the Dhow to this very expensive, posh hotel. I was almost disgusted by what I saw. I could see people sort of, shouting at porters and things like that, and being very overbearing and just pointing at things, demanding things be done. But it was a very powerful feeling when I got to the Taj. It was like I was sort of distanced from it, like I'd come from another planet to see just how people behaved in what we would call our familiar world. Bombay is the most difficult place to film yet. The people who stare at the camera, the dripping humidity, the extraordinary locations. Watching a mongoose driven to draw blood from a snake in amongst grinding poverty. It's wearing us all down. I don't remember that. I look back on those journeys and think we all had such a wonderful time, but of course you didn't, you had doubts, you had worries, you got very tired. And of course filming in Bombay, it looks terrific in the end, but actually working through it was pretty tough.
Dadar station, 20 minutes before departure of the Madras Express. No one seems to know what they're doing. People are being got in and out, scrambling about, changing places. Is this a permanent state of affair? I do notice on the bookstall there's a copy of Jeffrey Archer and a copy of Spycatcher in the middle of all this.
Yes, we weren't there for long. Not just about destinations. We've got to remember that the whole thing is a journey. It has to be done in under 80 days.
Are you travelling all the way to Madras?
Yes, from Bombay to Madras.
What will the South be like? I've never been there before.
It's like another country.
Of course the programmes are about Michael and his journey. Of course they are, but also I think fundamentally they're about the people he meets. And I think that's been one of the great enduring successes of his adventures.
The Indians, they're very friendly people. It was quite nice working there. They were very involved in what we were doing and very interested and genuinely felt that they could show us a better way of doing it.
Beautiful views down now to our right. Fields, trees, stretches of water. A party of children walking along the down line now. Little kids with their plastic bags, striding off very purposely. Looks idyllic out there, really, for them. It's the sort of thing that never loses its appeal. It's a completely emotional, nostalgic thing, I know.
There we are. You see, yes, I'm rambling on, expressing what is essentially the heroic nature of train travel, which from very early on, when I was very young, there's something heroic about trains. Just went through the cities and through the country. I had a sublime confidence.
I would be happy to watch Michael Palin look out the window of a train for an hour. Like, I don't know what it is. He always looks so centered. There's always such hustle and bustle as he's trying to get on them. There's always this missed connection. There's always, will we make the boat? It's just, you can feel him breathe, and you breathe with him. You kind of go, here we go. They were making up time now, and we're going, and we can watch the country. I mean, it's a great way to see a country.
There's a lot of little boy in the whole enterprise, really, in all the travels. I think when I've lost the little boy sense of wonder, I've lost something quite significant.
This magical train ride will be my last overland journey for quite a few days. From Madras, I caught a cargo ship to Singapore and then a container ship on to Hong Kong. A new continent and a new culture to try and get to grips with.
Good morning, Mr. Palin. Welcome to Hong Kong, sir.
Thank you very much. But in some ways, Hong Kong was just a prelude to the most exciting stage of the journey yet. Communist China itself.
China and Saudi Arabia, only two countries on the journey where you had that extra element of fear of offending some authority. So everything was potentially much more loaded going into China.
Outside the window is China, my first glimpse of China. It's different from Hong Kong because on the shoreline there are a lot of small thatched huts standing in the water. I suppose they're fishermen's huts. A lot of small fishing boats. It's a very broad grey-green estuary here.
There's a frisson going to China because it was a communist country, and communism then was still a very sort of potent, threatening image for Westerners. And it was not long after the Mao Zedong era, people being forced to go off to the fields and all that. So I didn't quite know what I was going to find. I was enjoying being far from home. This is what I wanted to travel for. I wanted to find places that were very different, not similar to home.
Sometimes I see the program of BBC in our television.
Yes.
And sometimes I listen to the radio, BBC in shortwave.
Yes. Shortwave, that's right.
Look at the clothing there. Look at what they're wearing. I mean, he's travelling at such a fascinating time of change. They're all in flipping Gucci and Levi's now.
That's what's so cool about it. It kind of feels like you're being let into a world that's been forbidden.
Shanghai is the largest city of China, with a population of more than 12 million. Though the street atmosphere feels medieval, there's a definite trickle of modern goods. You can buy an electronic calculator, but the price will still be added up on an abacus.
What I realised as we went through China was that the Chinese were very, very preoccupied with their own lives and this enormous transition from being sort of an agricultural peasant economy to an economy where big cities were growing, buildings were going up all the time. So something was going on in China that preoccupied the Chinese completely. And that was a feeling in China that there were a lot of things you didn't know and you couldn't know and they didn't want you to know, and there was no way of finding out. It wasn't sort of evident in sense of a sort of obvious oppression, people with guns pushing people around and all that, but there was a kind of acceptance that this was a huge, potentially very powerful country run by a sort of totalitarian government. On the train, on the other hand, there were one or two people to meet. Trains are always good because every sort of estate of man or woman uses trains, you know, from the richest to the poorest.
Do you carry an umbrella with you every day? Is it true or not?
No.
No?
If I set out of the house with an umbrella, I'd lose it within a day anyway. No. No, I don't. I just get wet.
Oh, just get wet. Okay.
You get the impression, oh, he just met those people, and it's rather a surprise to him and the cameraman and everybody else that they should actually have a conversation and share a joke.
Leaving, I felt we were on the home straight, even though we were still 2 oceans and a continent away from completing the circle. From Japan, we sailed to California, a 10-day voyage that gave me time to reflect on everything I'd seen and experienced. Then, after one last epic train journey right across America, we finally set sail for England. I lie in bed this morning and seriously consider what it will be like to be back home. I think that the journey has, in a way, calmed and settled me. It's been much nearer to sanity than the phone-ringing, celebrity-conscious world I left at home. At sea, the pace of life slows to a very agreeable level. And the thought of a return to city life is not, this morning, as tempting as I expected it to be. In fact, I could easily go round again. There we are, packing up my bag for the last time on board the Danish ship, the Leader Maersk, that had taken us from New York to Felixstowe. And I'm looking tired, let's face it. It's been a long, long journey. I've been on camera for 79 days. Look at that. There's a man who's knackered. Absolutely knackered. No acting required. I want to get home, I want to have a beer, I want to get to bed. We finally get to the Reform Club, and you know, it's wonderful. We've done it in 79 days, 7 hours. We go up the steps, and one more indignity ready to be heaped upon us.
Well, there we are. This is the Reform Club. This is where Phileas Fogg started his journey. This is where I began my journey on September the 25th, 1988, 79 days and 7 hours ago. Unfortunately, for reasons of their own, the club do not want me to go in there and film this afternoon, so I have to say this is the end of the journey on the pavement outside 104 Pall Mall. That's it.
British clubs, you know, it's not about letting people in, it's about keeping people out. So I learned a few lessons about being English that day. which left me very depressed for about a week.
Still, I was home, reunited with my family, back in my old life, and anxiously waiting for the moment of truth. What would the viewers make of my journey around the world?
And we're here to take your calls on anything to do with television. Let's have a look at what you've been calling about already in our open line.
Regarding Around the World in 80 Days, I have never enjoyed a programme so much. He has taken me personally to places I'd never seen.
So many of you have phoned in about this programme last night. David Templeman from Camberley. Congratulations, this is what television is all about.
The fact that it rated so highly was a surprise in a way, because there hadn't been anything like that before, which was quite so sort of spontaneous, improvised, unplanned.
It was game-changing. It's changed travel programmes forever.
Total, beautiful, melting mix of cultures and just humanity shared.
I learned that my desire to travel, my love of travel, wasn't something false. It wasn't something I had romanticised. It was very real. I didn't really ever expect it to unleash all the other programmes or the freedom to do other programmes.
This is it. I'm standing on the top of the world.
Pole to pole, this was a greater challenge. You know, countries that I'd never been to, the USSR, and all the way through Africa, then to Antarctica itself. Thrilling stuff.